Etymology, we're just waiting for a few people to come in. If you have any issues with the sound, or if you have any issues with the sound, or if the images are not showing up as we're going through, just let me know in the chat room, and then we can make the adjustment. Every now and then, Zoom freezes up, then the images freeze. So just let me know in the chat room. We can correct that. Give me 1 second. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. So yet I'll say once again, thank you everyone for joining in with this course. This is a new course for us. When you look on our Akhan page, we have, we did 19 courses in the previous year from July of last year all the way up until June. Then we didn't have courses in the summer, and then in the fall, we started off with 2 courses, the Oberima AFURAKA Manhood, Oberima Sem AFURAKA Manhood 13-week training, which is a different kind of course. Most of our courses are 6-week courses or 4-week, but that's a special course. And then we have ANIDAHO. So of course, they're dealing with awareness, exposing cultural identity fraud. We will be going through these 8 books in detail. All of the books on the flyer, you can download the ebook versions for free on our home page on our website. You can download those for free. That's all of our 31 books, including these. We also sell the soft cover versions. Most of these are either $9 or $10. All of our books are either $9 or $10. We have one that's 11 and a couple of them that are 8, but all the other ones are either $9 or $10 for the soft cover. And then the ebook versions are free. So the reason why we're having this course, as we state, we are AFURAKANU, AFURAITKAIT, Africans, Black people. We are Odwirafo, which is an Akhan term for Black people. We have always identified ourselves as AFURAKANI, AFURAITKAIT people, children of AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT. We've always identified ourselves as Black. We're not Moors, Asiatic, Aboriginal Americans, Hebrews, Atlanteans, children of Mu, extraterrestrials, all this stupidity. We're none of that foolishness. That's all born of self-hatred, us embracing the idiocy of the whites and their offspring. So we're going to get into detail and prove these things in detail as we have done through our books to destroy these fake identities, expose this self-hatred masking around or masked in the bodies and parading around in the bodies of some of our people who are self-destructive, but some who are agents of the whites and their offspring. So when we talk about ancestral religion, we're not just talking in true story, we're not just talking about incorporating these things to only empower ourselves and move forward, but part of that incorporation is the destruction, the elimination, the eradication of these false ideologies, these fake religions. That includes destroying Christianity, destroying Islam, destroying Judaism, Hebrewism, destroying Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Taoism, pseudo-esotericism, whether it's Kabbalism or Sufism or Gnosticism, or whatever people are forcing on our community. We destroy these fake traditions and these silly ideologies, Moorishism and flat earth nonsense and Asiatic and Aboriginal American and all this foolishness. So we destroy that with our books, as well as giving proper information so that our people can embrace our true identity. So we're going to start off this week with AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, the origin of the term Africa. And what we're going to do is go in detail every aspect of the text. so we can gain clarity. If you have any questions, of course, post them in the chat room and we can get to that. So the very first thing you see, for example, anybody who watched the series or part of the series, Hidden Colors, one of the first things that you hear in Hidden Colors is that the continent of Africa was named after a Roman general, a white Roman general. That is pure stupidity, falsehood. Any child, and we've had children within seconds simply Google Scipio Africanus, and they will find that the continent of Africa was not named after Publius Cornelius Scipio. He took on the name Africanus after he invaded and won a battle in northern AFURAKA, northern Africa, and he took on the name as one who conquered that region of Africa, so he became known as Scipio Africanus. So, for example, that starting off with a pseudo-historical, documentary series, and the first thing you learn is something that's 100% false. Phil Valentine is the one who said that in the part 1. It's 100% false, but that perpetuates ignorance and self-hatred. So when we published AFURAKA, the origin of the term Africa, not only did we talk about the etymological origin, but also the cosmological origin, naming the actual deities that comprise the name, Ka and Kait, as well as Afu Ra and Afu Rait. These are deities. So this is information, hold on one second. This is information that not only white scholars were unaware of, but even many of the quote unquote Afrocentric, African-centered scholars were unaware of at all also. So the first thing you see, this image here is from the papyrus of Hunefer, over 3,300 years ago, spelling out the term AFURAKA. So we already have it shown in the medutu, in the text, the hieroglyphs, which we're going to get into. And this is from the temple of Paraka, so-called Philae in southern Kamit, AFURAKA, which is also pronounced AFURAKA and so forth. This is an exact, image, photo from that temple spelling out the name of the region. Now, Hunefer, Chef, or papyrus, 3,300 years ago. Hold on, letting some people come in to the chat room. All right. AFURAKA. This is going back 3,300 years ago. We also will show from the papyrus of Ani as well. And we will also show that the reason why in the temple of Paraka, misnomered Philae, Pilak, and Piraka, and so forth, 2,400 years ago, AFURAKA is also pronounced AFURAKA, and there's a cosmological reason for that. We also show the determinative medut, or determinative glyph, representing the ka sound, is in the form of the continent. Now, as we get, go a little bit further on, we'll discuss that, but the key portion here is the reason we have the continent right side up with south at the top and north at the bottom is because that is the orientation that we've always used in ancient Kamit and Kamit. The term, when you talk about south, the word for west, the direction west, Amit, is also the word for right, which is Amit. The word for left is Aptet, but that's also the word for east, the direction east, Aptet. The only way right can also be west and left can also be east is if you're facing south. If you're facing south, when you point to the right, you're pointing west. If you point to the left, you're pointing east. We've always put south at the top of the, quote unquote compass. We gain our bearings from looking to the south, which was our homeland, our ancestral homeland, ancient Kamit, Nubia. And then right is the west and left is the east. The whites and their offspring decided to flip the globe around and place Europe at the top and north at the top. That was for political reasons. If you have a circle, what's on the top and what's on the bottom? But we always had south at the top. They flipped it around and started saying that north is the top and south is the bottom to make it appear that Europe was superior to AFURAKA, Africa, which is nonsense. But this is why we have it right side up. But even further, when you look at it right side up, as we say here, reflects the shape of the medutu, but it also shows the actual, it's the heartland, the centerpiece. It's in the shape of the human heart. And then when you look at the other continents in juxtaposition, in that proper orientation, you find the human heart just south or north of the human heart, just below the human heart, is the liver, which is the largest organ or gland in the body. You'll find that in the same position on Earth, you'll find Eurasia, which is Europe and Asia together. That continent Eurasia is the largest landmass on Earth, just like the liver is the largest organ on Earth and so organ in the body. And just so you can visualize what we're talking about. And so what you'll see here, of course, you have the lungs, then you have the heart, and then just south of the heart, or I'm sorry, north of the heart is the liver. And the liver in and of itself is the largest gland. So the largest landmass is Eurasia. You have AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, then you have Eurasia in the same position, heart and liver. And then you have Northern Eurasia is where the intestines are, the waste processing region of the planet and so forth. And if you look at the different continents, they represent the major organs of the body only if it's properly oriented with south at the top and north at the bottom. Okay, so let's get into the text.
Yo, Kwesi.
Yep.
So that makes America the stomach?
Well, in the Western hemisphere is you get into the lungs, you know, Western and Eastern hemisphere, you start getting into the lungs like India and, you know, America
Okay.
on both sides. So, and we're gonna actually get into that a little bit further into the course, but we're gonna show the different organs and the different continents. The stomach region would be more so you'll have, if people, when we talk about the migrations and so forth, you'll see that our people left AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT and migrated into Southern Europe and of course the Near East and Asia and so forth. And we were populating Southern Europe and the Near East and Asia for thousands of years before any whites and offspring existed, before there were white Europeans, before there were white Asians and so forth, before they existed on Earth. We were in the southern regions. So that southern portion is where you'll find the stomach and so forth. But then when you get further up, where the whites and offspring came into being in northern Eurasia at the end of the last ice age and so forth, that northern portion, you start getting into the intestinal region, small intestine, large intestine, and so forth, where they develop naturally is the waste processing center of the planet. Okay. So we say Earth's surface is comprised of 71% water, 29% landmass. Initially, the Earth's surface was completely covered by water. Of course, studying geology, that's well known and so forth, but our people always knew that, and part of the cosmology of ancient Kanidi Kamit and AFURAKANI, AFURAITKAIT, the African Black civilizations across the continent and wherever we have gone in the world, we have that same recognition of that reality, that the entire planet was covered by water first, but then we talk about the manner in which the first landmass manifested. Now, they will talk about earthquakes on the ocean floor of the primordial earth caused a portion of the ocean floor to rise up above the surface of the water. Geologists know that When you look at videos of the formation of an island, you'll see volcanic eruptions, you'll see smoke spewing up out of the water, and then you'll see explosions and so forth, and a portion of the, the landmass will burst through the surface of the water. You'll see it being very smoky and starting to cool down, and you'll see the birth of an island. And you can Google birth of an island on YouTube, and you'll see how islands form and rise up from underneath the surface of the water to become a raised land. We've known that, geologists know that and so forth, but we talk about the spiritual foundation of why that took place. And that ties directly to the name of the first landmass. So, in the beginning, earthquakes on the ocean floor of the primordial earth caused a portion of the ocean floor to rise up above the surface of the water. This raised land became the first landmass of earth. The masculine term for raised land, high land, exalted land, hill, mountain, in the language of Kamit is Ka. And the feminine term for the same is Kait, also written Kait. The terms are often written with the Q-A, Q-A-I-T, Ka and Kat. We'll talk about why they use K's and Q's when English writing or English speaking Egyptologists were translating glyphs and so forth. The K sound, there's more than one K sound. So when they had the bow with the lip, which is the K sound, but when they had another symbol that represented the K sound, they would use a Q for the second K sound. So it's spelled either way, but the symbol is for Ka, you'll find. So you have Ka, the raised land, high land, mountain, hill, and so forth, Ka. The medutu hieroglyphic symbol representing soul, Ka, is the two arms raised up with the two hands. The medutu representing raised land, exalted land, high land, Ka, is the man with two hands raised up. Now, what we note is the two arms representing Ka, or soul, the soul of an AFURAKA or AFURAITKAIT human being, are the same two arms that are used for the spelling for Ka, or raised land. Let's first go down to the appendix to prove that. Now, in one of the hieroglyphic dictionaries, you see the Q sound, K, and Coptic, it's spelled the late period Kemet dialect, Coptic, the Coptic Egyptian dialect, quote unquote. That K sound is represented by the letter K, and also this glyph. So it's the K sound. So you have Ka, hill, high ground, high place. You see the K sound, which is a little triangular shape. The two birds representing the A sound, K, A, A. And then the determinative symbol, which doesn't have a phonetic value typically, is just representative of what's being talked about. So this Ka means something that is exalted, high, high place. Another spelling is the K and the A sound, Ka, and then a stepped terrace, a stepped mound of land and so forth. Ka, hill, high ground, high place. Sometimes it's reduplicated. Ka, hill, high place. Kat, highland, the Nile banks above the river. Kat can be a high or a fine building and so forth. In the Coptic dialect, Kai, which is spelled here, K-A-E-I-E. Now we can get the vocalization is Ka or Kai. That is the high land, the land above the banks of the river. We have Ka as well as Kat or Kait. That is the feminine aspect is the et, the T at the end. This T is a suffix, a feminine suffix. So just like in English that passed over into English, so if you have Sean, feminine is Shawnette. You have John, Johnette, Paul, Paulette, and so forth. The et being the concretizing or feminine suffix that comes directly from ancient Khanitic Kemet. So you have Ka, the masculine term, hill, high ground, Kat, the feminine. And variations in the way it's spelled. Kait, Kaye, or Koi, highland above the surface of the river, the Nile of the river. So, but then you have further definition. Ka, God of creation, Ka, as well as Kait. And notice, even though they're using the English form Q, the vocalization is the Ka sound, as we can see in Coptic, it was pronounced Kai, Kai, Ka, as well as Kait, masculine and feminine titles for the high place on which the God of creation stood. The hill in the region of Kemenu, which is today's Kemenu, they call it Hermopolis in Greek, but the region of Kemenu in ancient Kamit. If you go to quote unquote Hermopolis today, if you take a trip to Kamit, you say, hey, we're going to go to the ancient city of Hermopolis, the city of the primordial 8 divinities, the Kemenu, the 8 divinities they call the Agdawad and so forth. If you were to go to Hermopolis or Kemenu, that is the region where the first mound rose up, a tipping point of the first mound. So, Kaka, a hill in the region of what is now called Kemenu or Hermopolis, on which the heavens rested, the high place which the God of creation stood. So, this is the region where the first landmass rose up above the surface of the river, the waters, the high place upon which the God of creation stood, the place upon which the heavens rested. Now, so we show that, you know, Ka, the Q medutu is Kai and so forth. We just mentioned that. And as we said a little bit earlier, this AFURAKA, when you show the actual medutu, spell them out. The reed, the chick, the little bird, the horned viper for the F, the face, the head and the face and the neck facing forward with the 2 ears and so forth is here. And Kai with the determinative of the stepped terrace or the stepped hill and so forth. This is what this says. And this comes directly from, this is the papyrus of Nehem. And this is the specific text is right here, AFURAKA. But since it was vertical in the text, and people are not accustomed to reading it vertically, we just took that portion out. It starts right here, Af with the F, Her, Kai, and then we put it horizontal so you can easily read it. But when you're looking at the text, it's vertical, read from top to bottom. So we said the same 2 arms for the term for soul, Ka, are the same 2 arms on the body of the man for high, exalted, rising, and that's also Ka. We just saw that. Now we go further to corroborate that in the living languages of AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT today. We saw Ka and Kai, 2 different versions, but then we also saw it reduplicated as Kaka. And that's a naming practice all across the continent where you want to emphasize equality, you reduplicate or double the name. If someone is, you know, Joe, then we say Jojo. If it's Ni, we say Nini. If we say, you know, whatever term it is, we double those names. That's all across the continent. We do that here in North America as well. So, we saw Kaka, meaning hill, highland, raised land. In the tree language of the Akhan people of Ghana, the term Koko is defined as hill, raised land. This is the same Kaka in Kamit, Koko in Akhan. In Akhan cosmology, the area called Koko Afu is defined as the region where the great ancestress and her family settled after having descended from the sky, heaven, on a golden chain after the beginning of the world. So we just saw in the medutu, Kaka is the place upon which the heavens rested, and the place upon which the God of creation stood. In Akhan, Kokal is the place where the great ancestress and her family descended from heaven on a golden chain and landed in that region that was the first landmass. Same thing. And it's not because Akhan people who were in the forest belt in the so-called 1800s, when Swiss missionaries were sitting with them in the forest, compiling a dictionary, asking them, what is the word for hill? What is the word for mountain? What is the word for cat? What is the word for dog? And they were giving them, all the different terms and so forth. They weren't giving them these terms because they had read hieroglyphic dictionaries and they wanted to fool the, Christian missionary in the 1880s to line it up with what was going on in Kamit, to pretend like they came from Kamit. They were giving them the language, just like they passed on the language today. If you ask an Akhan person, what is the term for hill or highland, they'll say Kaka. What is Kaka Afur, or Afur Kaka? They'll tell you what that is. That's the sacred region where the first landmass is, that deals with the beginning of the world and the foundation of the world. Now, in the Yoruba language, people of Nigeria, southwestern Nigeria, Yoruba people, the term Oke is defined as mountain or hill. This is the Ke of ancient Kamit. In Yoruba cosmology, there are 5 sacred hills, one of them being the Oke, which is Ka, the Oke Ara, and Oke Ara is defined as the hill upon which the Orisha, which is the Yoruba term for gods and goddesses, deities, first descended to create the world. So there's an Oke, a high sacred land in Yoruba upon which the deities descended to create the world. There's a Ka or Ke or Kaka in ancient Kamit, upon which the God of creation first stood at the beginning of the world. In Akhan, Kaka is the hill upon which the ancestress and her following, her clan, first descended from a golden chain from heaven at the creation of the world. But we're not just using little terms that are similar. We're talking about the term itself, preserved in 3 different languages, and the cosmology also preserved in 3 different languages and cultures. Now, they all refer to a raised land. Now, the most important definition, one of them, a high ground upon which the deity of creation first stood. The deity of creation spoken of in this definition is Ra, the creator, and the creatress is Ra'et. So we have the creator and the creatress, not just the creator, but the creator and creatress. Ra is the most ancient name of the creator of the world. We have variations of Ra in various languages across the continent. Da in Vodun is the creator of the world. Idohuedo is the creatress, that's Ra and Ra'et. You have in Yonkompon and in Yonkompon, but also called Adanga, Edanga, and the root is Dang. That's the creator in Akhan. And you'll find it across the board. Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, function together as one divine unit. And just so we can get so you can get a visual of that. Just so you can see an image of them. So this is in Yonkompon in Akhan, called Ra in ancient Kamit. In Yonkonton in Akhan, called Ra'et in ancient Kamit. Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress of the universe. So they function together as one divine unit, the supreme being. They have the divine life, living energy, animating all created entities in creation. Divine living energy flowing through all naturally created entities in creation, plant life, animal life, mineral life, AFURAKA, human life, the planets, suns, moons, stars, black substance of space, the divine living energy, life force power, moving, expanding, and contracting through all created entities. That is Ra and Ra'et. Now, we say it's Ra who created the primordial earth as the great spirit, and Ra and Ra'et together, the great spirit, the divine living energy, animate force. They, as the Great Spirit, then move through the primordial earth, causing the perturbations on the ocean floor. So just like you can take in a deep breath and your lungs fill with air, but you also are taking in some of that solar energy and your body is being heated up and so forth, that divine living energy of Ra and Ra'et, just like the sunlight moving through the atmosphere of Earth, penetrating the atmosphere, hitting the ground and warming up the ground and so forth, but that divine solar energy, fire, heat, and so forth, penetrating the primordial Earth, that energy penetrating the ocean floor and so forth, causing perturbations on the ocean floor, leading to volcanic eruptions on the ocean floor. The vibrations, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, separation and movement within the ocean floor, forced a portion of the ocean floor to surge upward above the surface of the water, as we can see in geology and so forth. And once that landmass broke through the surface, it was a high land. Everything else was underwater. So it was a Ka, masculine term. Kait is the feminine aspect of the land. That is the first Ka, Kait. The first raised land, highland, hill, mountain. Once that landmass broke through the surface of the water, as you will see in a video of islands forming, you'll see it's cooling off and there's a lot of steam and so forth. But once it broke through, now this landmass exists. Then the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'et, as the Great Spirit, moved through and penetrated that original landmass to bring life and vitality to that landmass. No different than sunlight penetrating the earth and warming up the earth and making the earth fertile. If it was in the ice, if it was at the North Pole, there would be some sunlight, but it wouldn't be penetrating. There would be snow, and you're not going to have crops. But when you're in a region where there's direct sunlight that's stimulating the earth and so forth, and then you can have vitality. Now, after they move through the landmass, causing separation and development within the landmass, that divine living energy makes the earth vital. That would eventually lead to the development of physical forms of mineral life, plant life, animal life, AFURAKA, human life. Ra and Ra'et would ultimately move through the newly fashioned bodies of plants, animals, minerals, and AFURAKA, humans in order to enliven us. Ra and Ra'et use the Aten, the sun, as a physical transmitter of their spiritual energy, the solar heat energy circulating throughout your body and the bodies of other created entities of the power of Ra and Ra'et. So what we're talking about simply is the divine living energy penetrating the primordial earth, the ocean floor, causing volcanic eruptions. Once the earth breaks through the surface of the water, it is a Ka, a Kait, a raised land. Then the energy of Ra and Ra'et possess or penetrate the land, cause it to be enlivened and vital and full of energy. And then things can come forward: plant life, animal life, mineral life, AFURAKA, human life. Now, the term Af in the language of Kamit means flesh. Flesh as in a house or a chamber. Flesh and house are also, related. Your flesh is a house for your spirit. So the word Af, meaning flesh, is also the word Af, meaning house or chamber. The plural of Af is Afu. So if you look at Af, meaning flesh, but Af also meaning house, when you look in the Akhan language, the term for house or home is Ofie or Ofi. Af in ancient Kamit, Afi or Ofi in Akhan, meaning house or dwelling place. In the Yoruba language of Nigeria, Afin is the Yoruba term for palace. So Af in ancient Kamit, Ofie or Ofi in Akhan, Afin in Yoruba, all genetically related, phonetically related, and conceptually related. Moreover, the Akhan term, the tree term from the Akhan people, Afun, is defined as carcass of an animal, that which is discarded and taken up once more. Afun meaning flesh, Afun meaning carcass of an animal, and so forth, the same in both languages. Now, this is why in Kamit, the title of Ra, when he moves through matter, is Afu Ra. The creator as Afu Ra takes the form, the flesh of a ram. So what are we talking about? This is Ra with the head of a flat horned ram with the solar disk between the horns. but he also takes the form of a falcon with a solar disk on his head. So why is that the case? In the cosmology of Kamit, Ra operates through the Aten, the sun. He is not the sun god. Aten is the sun god. Atenit is the sun goddess. The word for sun is Aten, and Atenit, masculine and feminine. There's a sun god or sun Toro. His name is Aten. There's a sun goddess, Torot. Her name is Atenit. Ra will use the Aten to transmit his divine living energy, just like an abosom, Akhan for deities, Orisha, Yoruba for deities, of Vodou, Eve for deities, will engage the process of spirit possession. They will possess the body of somebody during ritual. Once the spirit enters the body, then it moves through the body of the individual. In the same fashion, the deities will possess not only human bodies, animal bodies. Therefore, you have animal totems sacred to the divinity, but also plant totems and mineral totems, including solar orbs, the stars, planets, and so forth. The energy of Ra penetrating and illuminating the Aten is a form of spirit possession. So he'll operate through the Aten and use the Aten to transmit his solar energy, or transmit his divine living energy through that solar energy. So Ra rides in a sun bark, a boat across the sky from horizon to horizon, from sunrise to sunset. He then travels in his bark or his boat for the 12 hours of the night through the spirit realm or underworld. After his underworld journey in the solar bark, emerges from the underworld on the eastern horizon as the new sunrise and the beginning of a new day. This is the Aten, and Ra in the form of a falcon, using his energy and using the Aten to broadcast his energy or transmit his energy. So the sun rises in the east, sails across the sky, and sets in the west. So sails across the sky for the 12 hours of the day and sets in the west. They'll show Ra, that divine living energy, in the boat of the sun, sailing across the sky, quote unquote, flying across the sky. So he's an avian animal, a falcon, a bird, and so forth, flying across the sky for 12 hours of the day. Then the sun sets and goes into the quote unquote underworld for the 12 hours of the night. When the sun sets, Ra gets out of the day boat and gets into the night boat, the Sektet boat, and he's in the underworld for 12 hours of the night, sailing in the underworld. When he's sailing in the underworld, he takes the form of a land animal. He's no longer in the sky as a, avian animal, a bird taking flight. Now he's in the underworld, so he takes the form of a land animal. That land animal is the flat-horned ram, so he takes the form of a flat-horned ram. That's the animal totem. And sails in that boat underworld for the 12 hours of the night, and then after that reaches the east, discards the flat-horned ram animal totem body and gets back in the form of a falcon and flies up in the sky with the sun and sails across and so forth. Now, he's called Ra when he's flying across the sky in the form of a falcon. But when he gets in the underworld, when he gets inside matter, that's like solar energy outside of just solar energy. But when it gets in the earth and is moving in the earth and heating up the earth, it is solar energy encased by earth. It's earthen energy. Or if you take in a deep breath, you have air in the atmosphere, you take it in, you suck it in, now it's encased in your lungs. It's internal. It's inside of the flesh of your lungs. So it's encased air. But the word for flesh in ancient Kemet is Afu, so you could call it Afu air, the air that's within the Afu, that's within the flesh. When you breathe out and release it, it's just air again. But when it gets inside of your Afu, your flesh is Afu air because you're distinguishing it. Now, and that's what we say here. It comes inside of your house or your flesh. When Ron Riot first moved through the primordial hill, the Kait, to make it vibrant, to give it life, Kait, the raised land became the house or place of residence for the divine living energy of the creator and creatress, Ra and Riot. It is for this reason that Ra and Riot take on the titles Afu Ra, Afu Rait, Afu, the flesh. Ra is moving through the flesh of the house. Ra'et is moving through the flesh of the house. This is why the first landmass is called the Ka of Afu Ra, the land of the creator, and the Kait of Afu Rait, the land of the creatress. The Ka of Afu Ra is AFURAKA. The Kait of Afu Rait is AFURAITKAIT. AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT is the divine land. Geologically, this first emergent landmass is of the continental plate. AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT. The male title, AFURAKA, was corrupted by the whites and their offspring to AFURAKA, AFURIKUS, and a number of different corruptions. So this is from the papyrus of Kensu Meshu. What it's showing is a bird's eye view of the primordial mound from the top down. This is the mound. This is the top of the mound. And you see 4 primordial divinities deep within the primordial mound, the first landmass of earth. And you have 2 water divinities pouring sacred water around the primordial mound. So this is the ocean and so forth. And then there's a little mound that rises up from the ocean that's looking from the top down. And then you see the solar disk moving from one side to the next until it rises in the east for the first sunrise in the truce of the world. So you have this primordial mound, coming out of this sacred fertile water and so forth. And then it explodes, breaks through the surface of the water, becomes a mound and so forth. You have the energy of the primordial divinities. You see them with their plows and so forth, showing us cultivated land and so forth. But that divine living energy of Ra and Rait is moving through that primordial mound that has the potential to bring forth all life. And then we compare that with a computer image of a fertilized ovum with a nucleus in the middle and so forth. When you see the fertilized ovum, you see the exact same structure. Now, because we recognize that what's going on inside on a microcosmic level is a representation of what's going on outside. So the primordial mound was a fertilized ovum that has the potential to bring forth all life. So that's exactly what's going on. Now, so that's what we're talking about in that particular section. It's showing Ra and Rait moving through the primordial mound and so forth. As we said, the 8 figures are the primordial 8 divinities, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But that's what we were talking about there. Now, Afu Ra or Afra exists in the language of the Akhan. A major abosom deity worshipped in Akhan culture is the abosom called Afram. A feminine version of this name in Akhan culture is Afra. We've already talked about the cosmology of the descendant of the great ancestors in our clan, descending from a golden chain, landing on the primordial mound and so forth. Koko Afu. Koko means hill, raised land. Afu is a term in Twi Akhan meaning fertile land, plantation, land that is vibrant and so forth. Afu is often written Afur in Akhan, so you'll hear them say Afu, Afu. So Koko Afu is Afu Koko, which is the first primordial land upon which those descended from heaven established themselves and so forth. That's, that same cosmological story in a different way. The Akhan term Fura means to put on. Example, to put on clothing. Is directly related to the notion of Ra when entering matter, taking on matter as his flesh or his house, thus having the title Afura, to put on flesh or matter. Shown in the illustration, he takes on the form of a flat-horned ram. When he leaves the, underworld, he discards that flat-horned ram and becomes that falcon once again. Now, it's no different than a caterpillar, walking along earth and so forth, but eventually, becoming that mummy, that mummified figure, and then the butterfly flies up and goes into the sky. It went from a land animal, land creature, to one that takes flight. Now, and that goes back to in Akhan, Afu, meaning a carcass of an animal, that which is discarded and taken up once more. Fra in Akhan or Afra also has the meaning to become intermixed, commingled. If you mix something up, that's Afra. You have this one thing, you have another thing, and you mix them together, that's Afra. That points to the fact that Ra and Ra'at, upon intermixing or commingling with matter or flesh, become Afu Ra, Afu Rait. That's Afra, Afu Rait. The term from also has the meaning to be on fire, to burn, blaze, flame, fire. The term from related to the name, the abosom, the deity Afram, connection to the life force energy being transmitted through the sun. So we just show those different things to show that Afra, Fura, Afram all relate to mixing, mingling, putting on the flesh and so forth, divine living fire, spiritual force. In Akhan, cosmologically, same titles, and concepts in ancient Kamit. The term kua in the tree language means farm. Kua or kwa is related to ka as land, that fertile farmland as a result of Ra and Ra'at moving within it to make it vibrant. So we look at the correspondences. Afu, flesh, house, flesh of Ra and Ra'at. Afu Ra and Afu Rait, title of Ra and Ra'at. Ka, highland, ka, highland, land, that's ancient Kamit. In Akhan, Ofi, house, home, also used for sanctuary or a temple. Afu, animal carcass, flesh, that which is put on, discarded, and taken up again. Afu, land that is fertile, firm, land, plantation, land with vibrant energy moving through it. Fura, to put on. Afra, to become intermixed, commingled. Fram, to be on fire, to burn, to blaze. Afram and Afra, Afura, Afraat, and so forth. The name of the male and female divinities in Akhan. Kokko, hill, high mountain, highland. Kua, farm, fertile land. Now, so cosmologically, the very name of the divinity Ra as Afu Ra, the name of the goddess Ra'at is Afu Rait, and cosmologically why they become Ra and Ra'at and become Afu Ra and Afu Rait, because their spirit is moving through matter and flesh, the flesh, which is also the matter. That's a cosmological reality. No European can give you that cosmological reality. The first landmass in the true story of creation, which is they identify in the region of Kemenu in Kemet right now. So that's when that first point, rose up from the water. And then eventually the water begins to recede and the entire continent emerges. But that first point, when the water first begins to recede, it's in the region of Kemenu, where you can visit that today. That's what our people were saying. So it wasn't in North America or South America. It wasn't in India. It wasn't in some island of Mu or Atlantis or any idiotic notion like that. They're talking about the specific region they pinpointed and what was going on cosmologically, and they called it Ka and Kait. And then Afu Ra and Afu Rait moved through the Ka and Kait to create the first landmass. That's a cosmological reality. Now, false etymologies, false origins of the term Africa. So we can destroy these idiots talking about, it comes from these different areas. And even before we get to that, let's just show just so you can see some of the medutu hieroglyphs with regard to this. We just said af, as well as ah, means flesh, as well as, house, chamber. Af, flesh, meat, joint, member. Off, another spelling, flesh, meat, body, carcass. But then you also have ah, which means limbs, members, flesh. Af or ah means both, different pronunciations. Then you have afai, a tent, a camp, a chamber. You have A as well as A, meaning an island, which is a landmass. But then you have A, meaning nest or home. Ait, which is also A, abode, house, court, temple, shrine, court of a town, camp. A and aqua, a piece of flesh, part of the body, joint, carcass. So A meaning island, A meaning nest or home, A meaning, and also abode, house, court, temple, but then A also meaning a piece of flesh. Af meaning flesh, body, meat, carcass, members, flesh. But then Afait, which is also Afa, meaning tent, camp, chamber, enclosure. When you're talking about Af, it means flesh, but also means house or chamber. When you talk about Ah, it means flesh, but also means house or chamber. So we just wanted to point that out to show you the medutu, the hieroglyphs for that. We talked about it, but we wanted you to see the actual glyphs. Now let's get into the false etymologies that most of these fools are using. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, they put forward a history of Africa, multi-volume set. Scholars from around the world came together to publish this series of books in an encyclopedic fashion and so forth. When they talked about the etymology of the term Africa, they didn't know its origin, but they gave a number of possibilities, according to them, coming from different languages. We show that every one of those possibilities is inaccurate. Not only are they inaccurate, they don't come from a bunch of different languages. So the Romans, Greeks, Arabs, Hindus, they give all these different people the origins of the term Africa. We just talked about Scipio Africanus, Leo Africanus. In fact, let's dispose of that first. And that's here at the end of the book. And this is page 59. As you can see, the individual called Publius Cornelius Scipio is the one who invaded North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT nearly 2,000 years ago. Went into a battle, won that particular battle in North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, and began calling himself Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus, the one who conquered Africa. Europeans have always done that. They would name themselves after the place they conquered to try to, act as though they subdued the place and now, they're in control. All you have to do is look up his lineage, his blood lineage. His name was Publius Cornelius Scipio. His father's name was Publius Cornelius Scipio. That's the father. His grandfather's name was Lucius Cornelius Scipio. His great-grandfather's name was Lucius Cornelius Scipio. But his name was Publius Cornelius Scipio, and he had a brother named Lucius Cornelius Scipio. His brother's name was Lucius. His name was Publius. Why? Because he was named after their father, and he was called Publius Cornelius Scipio. And then his brother was named after their grandfather, so he was called Lucius Cornelius Scipio. As you can see, Scipio, 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 Scipio Barbatus, going back generations, nobody had the last name Africanus. So any child within a few seconds, if they simply Googled the name, they would find that out. So why is it at the beginning of Hidden Colors and many other so-called scholars and so forth are parroting this idiotic notion that the continent was named after this individual, when nobody in his family tree had that? When he won the battle in North Africa, AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, he became known as Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. What's important is that his brother, Lucius Cornelius Scipio here, he invaded Asia and he won a battle in a region of Asia. And once he won that battle, he did the same thing that his brother did. He named himself after the region. So he became known as Lucius Cornelius Scipio Asiaticus. So one is Scipio Africanus, one is Scipio Asiaticus. Neither one of them had that name, those names when they were born. Their father didn't have it, their grandfather didn't have it, their great-grandfather didn't have it. They never say that Scipio-Asiatic is named the continent of Asia because it was named after him. They say he invaded Asia. When he won a battle in the region of Asia, he started calling himself Scipio-Asiaticus. But because it's Black people dealing with AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, they want to make us feel like we're inferior and we can't even name our own continent. Then they start saying, well, continent was named after Scipio. Pure stupidity. All one has to do is simply do a cursory search of the blood circle, the lineage of Publius Cornelius Scipio, and you find that easily. So why didn't they do that research in Hidden Colors, or some of these other quote unquote African-centered scholars who have been parroting this false notion for all these years? Because they don't know what they're talking about. And then you have some who have an agenda because they were pushing that Moorish idiocy or some other identity based on self-hatred. So the Arab version, Ifriqiya, comes from the Roman corruption Africa. So they will say, the Arabs will say, well, you know, they'll say, well, Africa comes from Ifriqiya. That's an Arabic term. Some of them will say it means Queen of Heaven and so forth. We're going to find out why, because that's talking about Ra'et herself. But it doesn't come from the Arabs. They were using the term that came from the Romans. Now, some will say that because the Roman suffix ka means land, the Roman suffix ka means land, and land of the Afri. The Afri is the name of a Berber tribe in North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT. So they'll say land of the Afri, and they'll say the Romans called it the land of the Afri people. And, you know, this is where the term comes from. The Romans didn't come up with the term ka, meaning land. We just showed in the medutu that we've been using the term ka for raised land, specifically raised land, high land, for thousands of years before Romans existed on earth. Thousands of years. So it has nothing to do with the Romans. The Afri people do exist. These are the ancient Western Nubians, those who live west of Kamit, just like you have some Nubians, Kanitu, living south of Kamit, in Knesset, Kanit, so-called Nubia, and so forth, but in the region of Libya, parts of North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, some of our people were living in those regions and so forth. We lived in those regions, and then we moved into the Nile Valley, the Happy Valley, and established civilization after the desertification of the region that was an aquatic region. The so-called Sahara Desert now used to be an aquatic region full of life and, you know, flora and fauna and so forth. But then when it became a desert over 7,000 years ago, some of our people started moving towards the riverine areas, which included the Hapi, the so-called Nile, and other areas to settle and so forth. But we were living in this region of North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT for tens of thousands of years. So the Berber group called the Afri, they call themselves Afrika. This is pronounced Afrika, but also Afrika and also Afrik. So when you look up the Afrika people or Afrik people, you will see the different spellings. We just showed that Af, AF, is also AU, Af. That's why you have Afrika as well as Afrika, and it's pronounced both ways. And we're going to show that a little bit later in the book. So, today's Berbers or Amazigh people are represented by the original Afurakani, AFURAKAIT people. Then you have white Arabs and other white Europeans who invaded North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, who are living in Libya now. People who look like Gaddafi and people like that, who was not one of our people, one of those invading Arabs, invading Europeans. And now they're calling themselves Berbers. They are not the original Berbers. The original Berbers still live there, and they're jet black people. We have an image of them in Par 4. Just as we see that white Arabs are invaded Kamit. They're calling themselves Egyptians now. They've been here there for a number of centuries. Of course, they're not the original inhabitants. These are Fula people. This is a Black Berber. They still exist today. These are the descendants of the original Bri or Berber people who've been there for tens of thousands of years. These are the Afre or Afrika people who still call themselves Afrika, which is Afrika, AFURAKA, and so forth. They still call themselves that today. Tuareg people, which we're going to get into a little bit later, the Tuareg, Berbers, and so forth, these are the exact same people. This is a Bri or Berber, quote unquote, Libyan king of Kamit from the 23rd dynasty in the region of what is Libya now, where the Berber people are. The original Black Berbers, like these Tuareg Berbers and so forth, they live there right now. They are the direct descendants of the people who the Romans first came in contact with when they came across the Watch or the Great Green Sea, the Mediterranean, came to the coast of North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT. They ran into these people. They called themselves Afrika, children of Afri, the great mother creatress Afri, which is Afu Rait, and they call themselves Afrika people. And the Romans repeated that Afrika, and this is where the Romans learned Africa, and then the Arabs learned Afrikia as well. As we're going to see a little bit later, Rait, later called Dea Afrika, this is her, reposed on a bench and so forth, the goddess Africa and so forth, but it's Rait, as AFURAIT or Afri, and she became, her name is now pronounced Afri and Afru by the Berbers today. So when they say they're children, and this is the land of Afri and Afrika and so forth, they're talking about the land of Rait, the great tress. But let's get into the linguistic portion of that. So that's the cosmology associated with the name and the people. So those people have been living there for over, 10,000 years, 20,000 years and so forth before white people existed on Earth. Now, so when they talk about today's Amazigh or Amajeg, meaning the noble people or, the free people, really the noble people and so forth, that is a Tuareg term. These white invaders running around calling themselves Berbers are no different than these white Arabs calling themselves, quote unquote, Egyptians today. They are invaders. But the real Black people, the Afrika, are still there. And they have the exact same cosmological root of the name and what it actually means. Now, so that's the first piece. Now, when they say, oh, it may have come from the Greek term Afrik, meaning not cold, meaning the hot or the hot country. First of all, that's not a Greek term. In the medutu, the term afer means to burn, to be hot. The term afri means smoke, hot, vapor. This is the reason why the Greeks, having learned of these terms from invading Kamit, used the term afrik, meaning not cold. Now we'll go down and show the proof of that. Afer, to burn, to be hot. Afrik, smoke, hot, vapor. And let me know make sure if there's any issue with the images not showing, just let me know. That's on page 60. So when they say it's a Greek term, meaning, not cold or hot, actually it's not even a Greek term. So when they say it was named by the Greeks, Afrik, the Greeks got that term from our people. Next, the Romans, they'll say the term aprika means sunny. There's also a corruption actually from the term from Kamit. P, PH, and F interchange in various languages, just like you have, the PF in English for phrase or phraseology and so forth. It's the F sound instead of a PH sound, instead of a pa and a ha, it's a f, an F sound and so forth. Aprika. They'll say it means sunny, the sunny land in the Roman language, in Latin and so forth. So they'll say, well, the Romans gave the continent the name sunny land Africa. Afu Ra was associated with being the land of the Aten, the sun. The whites and their offspring say that Ra is the sun god. We just showed that Aten is the sun god, but Ra uses the Aten to transmit his energy. So the whites and their offspring in the past, to this day, they still say that. The medutu for the Aten is the disc with the dot in the middle. That's the medutu, the hieroglyph for the sun. It also makes up a part of the name of Ra, used as a determinative to denote day, sun, and time. So if you look at pa, ra, pa is the definite article, the same as the or the in English. So pa, ra in ancient Kamit means the God, pa, ra, the creator, as opposed to just ra, creator. Pa ra means the Ra or the creator. Para, they'll say, the Egyptologist says the sun, but it's really talking about Ra, the creator of the universe, the solar disk with the dot in the middle. Para, in the ancient language, as you can see in Coptic, this symbol is the PH sound. So instead of para, it became fra and fre, and it's pronounced fre in Coptic. So pre or fre in Coptic, AFURAKA or AFURAKA, the sunny, the sun, the sunny land. So when the Romans say, oh, AFURAKA means the land, ka, that is apre, that's sunny. That's not even a Latin term. Ka is the land that comes from ancient Kamit before Romans existed. Apre, a title of Ra, is para, which later in Coptic becomes para or pre or fre. That's a title of the divinity. So number one, that's not the origin of the name. It's Afrika in Latin is a corruption of apre, ka in ancient Chinese Kamit, the Coptic dialect. Just like Afri becomes Afrik in Greek, but Afri meaning hot and smoke and vapor and and so forth, that comes from our language. So it's not Greek, it's not Roman, it's not Arabic and so forth. Then they say, well, maybe it comes from the Phoenicians. The word for corn, Phoenician word for corn, the Phoenician word friki or farika, meaning land of fruit. So they'll say, well, one possibility is it comes from Phoenicians and it means, the land of fruit or the land of produce or corn and so forth, because it was a fertile land and Europeans were coming into North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, for grain and stuff like that, and wheat and corn and so forth. In the medutu, which is just inaccurate, but they're speculating. In the medutu, the hieroglyphs, the word per is defined as grain, corn, wheat, field produce of any kind. Per, pera, grains of any substance. You see the little 3 grains and so forth, plural. Pera. Coptic is the late form of the Kamitian language. The term pera or per, pera, in the Coptic dialect is written and pronounced fre. So pere in the ancient dialect, fere in the Coptic dialect, the late period dialect that came into usage about 2,000 years ago, the last form of the language of Kamit before the invasions. The PH sound and the F sound interchange, so per, pere becomes fre, meaning corn, fruit, grains, and so forth. That's the origin of the Phoenician term friki or freki or freika, the land, ki, ka in Phoenician, of corn or fruit or grains and so forth. Pre, this is a reference to the fertile land, land of fertility. The people who became Phoenicians were ancient Black migrants from Kamit. They migrated from northern AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, and went into the region, and they called it Kanana, so-called Canaan, but they called it Kanana, and they continue to speak the same language, same term. So ka means land, and pre or pre means the produce and so forth, grains of any kind, grains of any substance. the terms actually come from our ancestral language of Kemet, Kanit and Kemet, Nubian and Egypt. We carried it into the Near East and so forth, where Palestine, Israel is now Phoenician and so forth, but it's not a Phoenician term. They also say, well, it probably came from the Phoenician root farak, AFURAKA, meaning separation, including the notion of diaspora, saying it's the origin of the term, saying, that it's subtracted or separated from, Europe and the Near East. Once again, that's not even a Phoenician term, even though it's a Phoenician term, farak, meaning separation. Did the Phoenicians create that term, farak, meaning separation? Or did they carry that term into the Near East? It's not the origin of the term Africa, but it exists as a Phoenician word. Where does farak come from? One of the meanings of pair, written with the determinative symbol of two legs walking, is a sign of subtraction. Pair, pera, a sign of subtraction. Go away to leave one's countryside, evade a calamity. We also have perek or perak, meaning to divide, to separate. Perek or parak, to divide, to separate. That parak becomes farek or farak in Phoenician, meaning subtraction, separation, a diaspora, separation, leaving from one's country of origin, being associated with the land of fruit. So both definitions of land of fruit, fertility, as well as separation, diaspora, leaving one's country, evading a calamity, pera, perak, farak, and so forth, comes directly from the language of Kemet. It's not even a Phoenician term. It's not the origin of the term Africa. It's saved and preserved as a Phoenician word, but it came from our term anyway. So when they say it's a Greek term, Roman term, Arab term, Phoenician term, that's not the origin of the term Africa, but even further, none of those terms are Greek, Roman, Arab, and Phoenician either, which they didn't know. Next, Hinduism. They'll say in Sanskrit and Hindi, the term apara is the root of AFURAKA, the land ka of para. Apara in Sanskrit and Hindi means that which comes after. So AFURAKA meaning the land ka that comes after, apara. And if they make, the whites who invaded India, making India now the center of the world, the sun sets in the west. AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, Africa is west of India. So they'll say India is first, and the land that comes after India is AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, which is pure stupidity, first of all, because the heartland is AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT. But the land doesn't come after India. The civilization doesn't come after India. They're trying to pretend like Indian civilization was, original, which is pure stupidity. We've been in an AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT building civilization for tens of thousands of years. And we migrated to India and carried that civilization into India, not the other way around. But apara, meaning that which comes after, once again, in the medutu, pera, doesn't just mean grains of substance. It means posterity or progeny. Pera, what comes forth, offspring, that which comes after, your progeny, your posterity. So every one of those terms is false. It's not Greek, it's not Roman, it's not Arabic, it's not Phoenician, it's not Sanskrit. Those are not the origins of the terms. And even all those terms that are labeled Greek, Roman, Arabic, Phoenician, Sanskrit are not Greek, Roman, Arabic, Phoenician, and Sanskrit. All of them are terms that come from ancient Kanit and Kemet and can be found in the medutu. This is the work that these scholars at the United Nations did not do. They could have simply looked in the medutu, the hieroglyphic dictionaries that existed at the time, and then we can cross-reference these terms in the languages of Akhan and Yoruba and so forth, Ovambo across the continent to prove it with the proper vocalizations. But they didn't look in the medutu to see if these words exist and predate India and predate Rome and predate Greece and predate the Arabs and predate the Phoenicians and so forth. They just put it forward as possibilities for the origin of the term, we've destroyed all that foolishness. Okay. So in part 2, we start dealing with a little bit more of the cosmology. Now, if you have any questions on that, you can post them in the chat room. Let me know if there's an issue with the movement of the document. Make sure it's not freezing. But hold on one second. Let me. Okay, so talking about Ra and Rait, now we want to get into some cosmology about who Ra and Rait are and what their function in the world is. We talked about the term for soul, which is Ka, also the term for land. For the 2 arms with the 2 hands up, that is the medutu hieroglyph for the term soul. Your soul, in the true sense, and only AFURAKA people have that, is a deity in the head region of the person. Just like you have a physical body, and inside your physical body are smaller physical bodies, the organs that regulate order within the body. The supreme physical organ, smaller body in your gray body is in the head region, that's the brain. It has all of the blueprints for what should take place in the body. In your spirit body, called Sahu and Kamit, Sum Sum and Akhan, that's your spirit body. There's a radiant force in the head region of the spirit body, that is the Ka, or a Kait for females, that's the soul, divine consciousness. Oh, yes. So, yes, the term in Yoruba, ara, is referencing physical and flesh as well. So it's directly, exactly as you stated in the chat room. So, so you have a soul, a divinity in the head region, which is your divine consciousness. It is a male deity if you're males, female divinity if you're females. There's a divinity that is directed to take up residence in your head region to guide you throughout the course of your life. If you're a male, it's a male divinity you can communicate with that dwells with you and guides you. If you're a female, you're AFURAITKAIT woman, it's a female divinity who guides you, goddess that guides you throughout the course of your life, that you can communicate with and derive guidance from. That is the divine consciousness in the head region. That is the soul. So in European languages, saying soul just means breath, that's foolishness. We have a deity that's assigned to us that stays with us throughout the course of our lives. In Kamit, that is the term Ka. It means soul, the divinity in the head region. Kait, feminine, soul, divinity in the head region. That's Kra and Krawa in Akhan. Ori Inu in Yoruba, the inner spiritual head. That's the soul. But then you have a spirit, a divine living energy, a solar fire, spiritual force that dwells within you as well. That is called the Ba. The Ba is the spirit for women. Women is Ba'et. Ba for males and so forth. That is the divine living energy within you. That is the spirit within you. Spirit of life and animation. Represented by a bird or a human-headed bird with a bowl of burning incense, with a flame and so forth. Now, this is what I just described, the Ka and the Ba. And just to switch real quick, just so you can see an image of this on our WordPress blog. One of our articles is talking about Abba Nekabet, breath in the spirit, Ba'at. The Ba'at, the spirit of the AFURAKA man, spirit of the AFURAKA woman. The term for spirit, the divine living energy animating us, is Ba for the male, Ba'at for the female. It is a spirit force, a child of Ra and Ra'et. Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress of the universe, direct one of their children as a divine spirit force to take up residence within our spirit bodies, seated in the heart lung complex region. That spirit is shown as a bird with a bowl of burning incense with a flame arising, or sometimes a bird with a solar disk on the head. Okay, so message is saying that the screen didn't change. So are you seeing the blue background with the bird on the screen right now? Let me close it out and open it back up. Okay, so in the chat room, let me know, do you see the 3 images of the bird, one with the blue in the middle, blue background in the middle? If not, we just have to disconnect and reconnect. Okay. Okay, so the reason they show it as a bird, you know, with a bowl of burning incense with a flame arising, or a bird with a solar disk, that means you have an animate, which is the wings, fire within you. Just like you take in a deep breath, you pull in solar, energy as well. When we absorb solar energy and heat through the breath, the solar energy is carried within the oxygen through the bloodstream, thereby permeating the entire body. In the same fashion, the divine living energy animate within through the solar fire permeates our entire spirit body. We're not only vitalized by the energy, but for our people only, the Ba'at is also our energetic link to the the Baitu, the spirits of the deities and ancestral spirits. So just like you take in air, oxygen and so forth, but then there's also solar energy within the air. So you're not just taking in air, you're also taking in that solar energy. It permeates the air, it gets, the oxygen and so forth, and gets in your bloodstream and everything else. You have a divine spirit force that takes up residence within you, and that force is animate within you. On a mundane level, you can increase your fire through martial arts, so you can break a board or break a cinder block and so forth, increasing that fire through martial activities. But you have that solar fire within you. For AFURAKA people, there's a spirit, a divinity that takes up residence inside of us, and we can direct that solar bird to fly. Excuse me, it's a little fly in here. Direct that solar bird to move to our hands, to fly to our, legs, feet, and so forth for fighting, martial activities, different things. So we can send that quote unquote chi energy, which is a title of Ra, as a matter of fact, in ancient Kamit, chi. We can send that energy to different parts of our body to empower ourselves, embolden ourselves, and so forth. But we have a solar energy moving within our bodies. And the question is, were those statues used as shrines? Yes, they are. Shrines for the Ba'at, and so forth, just like we have the shrines for the Kait. Every time you see a sculpture that has to do with the divinity or even an ancestral spirit and so forth, those are miniature shrines, magnets for that energy. So a bowl of burning incense with a flame, you have an animate fire within you. That's what the Ba is. And then we show that, the head of the individual, that's your head. The physiologically, the heart and the 2 lungs is like the breast and the folded down wings of the bird, and then the head of the bird on top. So you have a bird sitting inside your body physically. Your heart and lungs are the breast and the wings of the bird. When your lungs inflate expand and contract. That's the batting of the wings of the bird. And you begin to fire up or inflame the divine living force within you. Begin to fan the flames of solar energy to increase your heat, within your body. So that's what we were showing in this article. We also show that when the person, after transitioning, this is the individual, but he receives nourishment for the female divinity, newt within the tree and so forth. He receives a replenishment of energy, but so does his ba, his divine living spirit, and that spirit will get back inside of his body. Just like you take in a deep breath and that air animates you. If you blow all the air out of your lungs and just keep your mouth and nose closed, clamp down, if you do that for a while, you're going to pass out because you need that vital force to get back inside your body to expand and contract so you can move. In the same fashion, you need that little bird, that divine solar force to get inside your spirit body, to animate your spirit body. Without that divine force, you're not animate. So that force can leave the body, become replenished by the goddess, and get back inside of the body and become seated. That radiant force becomes seated in the heart-lung complex. You see his wife here. She's receiving nourishment from Nut, the goddess in the tree, but she's also, her Bayet, her spirit is also being regenerated as well. Just to show that it is an entity dwelling within you that you can communicate with. So that's what we're explaining in that section there. So Ra and Rait, the creator and creatress, are the great spirit, the divine living energy. Amen and Amenet are the great mother and great father, supreme being. They are the grandchildren of Ra and Rait. So your body is like Amen if you're a male, Amenet as a female. And just so you can see them, so you know who we're referencing. So this is an image of Amenet, the great mother, Amen, the great father. Called Nyamewa and Akhan, the great mother, Nyamewa, Nyame, the great father. That's Olokun and Olorun in Yoruba, and Mawu and Lisa in Vodun. The great mother and great father, supreme being. Your body as a male is an emanation of Amen. Body as a female, emanation of Amenet. The organs within your body are the children of your body. They're smaller bodies, but they're children of your great body. Those organs in your body regulate order within your great body. Heart, liver, lungs, spleen, pancreas, and so forth. Those are the deities within you, the Orisha, the Abosom, the Vodou, and so forth. In the great divine body of the Supreme Being, Amen and Amenet, we have the various Abosom, Orisha, and so forth. They are the organs within the great divine body. And those organs give birth to cells. Your heart gives birth to cells, liver, liver cells, spleen, spleen cells, pancreas, pancreas cells. The great divine body of the Supreme Being, the deities, the Abosom, the Orisha, the Nsoru, Nsorotu, Neteru, Neteru, give birth to cells, children. That's plant life, animal life, mineral life, AFURAKA, human life. We are children of the organs. When we serve our parent organ as cells, we're serving the whole great body's great being. But the divine living energy, the solar energy moving throughout your body, the divine living energy moving throughout the great divine body of Amen and Amenet is Ra and Rait. You use your Ra force and direct it. You direct it to create for you. A woman uses her Ra force and directs it to her Rait force and directs it to create for her. We direct our Ra force, direct our Rait force to combine so we can create a child through copulation and so forth. The great being, Amen, Amenet, directs Ra and Rait to go out and create. So the supreme being and the creator and creatress are two different things. In fact, the creator and creatress are grandchildren of the supreme being. So that's important, which many of these, of course, the whites and offspring don't deal with that, but even some of the African-centered quote unquote scholars don't understand that either. They're still trying to push this idiocy of monotheism. But, so that's what we're talking about here. So, In this section, we were simply talking about the black substance of space is called the great Ka and Kait, the soul, the divine consciousness, the black melanin body within the supreme being. Just like we have melanin in our skin that makes us brown or black, inside the body, the organs are floating in melanin, just like out there in space, the planets, suns, moons, stars, and so forth are floating in a black substance. The masculine divinity is Ka, the feminine divinity is Kait. The whites and offspring call that dark energy and dark matter that makes up 99+% of the universe, but we call it Ka and Kait, and these are two divinities we can communicate with. Ra and Rait are born of that black substance. So when they're moving through that black substance, Ra and Rait eventually are born and explode from that black substance in the form of fire and light, and then they begin to spiral through that black substance to create the universe. Okay, hold on one second. Now that portion, we're mainly talking about, in that particular portion, we're talking about the black substance of space. When Ra and Rait began to spiral through the black substance and carve out black spheres, those become the first black bodies. The energy of Ra and Rait penetrate the black bodies and illuminate them, and those become the first stars. So when you hear about stars being black bodies, giving off black body radiation, in our cosmology, when Ra and Rait are born from the primordial black substance and explode in the form of fire and light, they begin to spiral through creation, carving out black spheres and illuminating those black spheres. Those become the first stars. Now, one of those stars is our Aten, sun, Atenit. And then the planets are born from that, including our Earth. And then the Ra and Rait's energy penetrate the Earth, separate the atmosphere from the, lighter portions from the denser portions, become the atmosphere. And the Earth is surrounded by water. Ra and Rait's energy penetrate the primordial Earth, the ocean floor, as we said, causing the volcanic eruptions, and the landmass bursts through the surface of the water. It's a black land. That black substance, born of the primordial black Earth, came from the solar disk that was a black body that came from the black substance. So that black substance out there ends up in the solar orbs and so forth, the primordial planets and so forth, and our bodies come from that planet. So that soil, so that blackness out there transfers into the blackness within our bodies. So this is what we're talking about in this particular section, just going through this notion of, the Ba and the Bayat, the divine living energy moving through matter. Ra and Rait are the great spirit, the great Ba, the great Bayat. And they're moving through the Ka, the Kait. So in the text, you see Ra here, and you see Asar here, and they meet in the region of Jejedu. So what does the text say, and why is it important? It is Asar when he goes into the city of Jejedu. He finds the Ba of Ra there, the spirit of Ra there. They embrace one another there, and thus comes into being the dual spirits within the dual Chafi. We talked about spirit possession before. When a spirit possesses somebody, this is an ancient reference to spirit possession and so forth. Spirit gets in the body of somebody and begins to speak. We always use the example of, if you're driving a car, you stop, your friend gets in the car, you get in the back seat, they take the wheel, and they start driving and directing the vehicle. There are two people in the vehicle. Yet one is in the front seat directing the vehicle, and one is in the back seat just observing. When spirit possession happens in our ancestral religious practices, ritual drumming, a song or chant comes and someone comes down, the spirit comes down and possesses them, their spirit goes into the back seat, and the spirit of the divinity or ancestral spirit is in the front seat directing the person's body and speaking and communicating with the community. When it's time for the spirit to leave, they leave, just like somebody getting out of your car and leaving. Then you get out the back seat and you get back in the front seat and you're in control of the vehicle. Spirit possession happens with regard to the orbs like the sun or the earth or the planets, with the divinities, more than one divinity operating through an orb in a vehicle. Deities of the earth, deities of the ocean, deities of the atmosphere, all operating within the same orb. in this particular text, they're talking about the fusion of Ra and Ra'et getting in the same quote unquote car or vehicle to work together. You see Al-Sar here with the mummified body. You see Ra in the form of Afu Ra, and he's wearing, he's the flat-horned ram with the solar disk in his head. When they merge, as it says in the text, they embrace one another there, thus comes into being the dual spirits within the dual Chafi. Then they merge. These two merge together. And now you have, as shown in the tomb of Nefertari, the bottom portion is the mummified portion, Al-Sar. The flat horn ram with the solar disk is Ra as Afu Ra. We said Ra and Ra'et are the great Ba and Ba'et, the great spirit of creation. Al-Sar, in one of his titles, is called Ka Hatep, the Ka or soul who is at peace. He's a great Ka. This fusion here is Afu Ra fused with Al-Sar in the form of Ka. AFURAKA. And we talk about the mummified portion, is Al-Sar, the flat-horned ram, and so forth. We look at the Jed pillar in ancient Kamit, that is the backbone, the vertebrae, and so forth. You will see that. This is why you see the two arms holding up the, symbol with the divine living energy, the vertebrae at the top of the neck. We'll also see the Jed pillar near the neck with the head on top, showing it is the vertebrae at the top. The cervical vertebrae, as a matter of fact, C1 through C8. But you also have another version in the papyrus of Ani. Al-Sar is in the Jed pillar with the two arms in the form of Ka, and then Afu Ra is operating through the solar disk. And once again, you have that AFURAKA with regard to divinities. The papyrus of Nespaka Shuti, as well as the papyrus of Kensu Mesu, they have the same, structure we talked about earlier with the primordial mound, the fluid, sacred waters around that, and the solar disk moving through the primordial Kait, the primordial land. They're two different versions of the same piece. We show that the mountains on the horizon, where the sun will rise between those two mountains on the horizon, that's Afu Ra operating through the sun. He's rising between the two mountains. Two mountains are the Ka. Even the two arms, the two hands up, are in the form of the two mountains that are holding up the sun, from which the sun will emerge. So even within that, you have Afu Ra just emerging. He doesn't clear the mountains yet. When he clears the mountains, he's no longer Afu Ra. He's just Ra in the form of a falcon. When he's emerging from the land as a land animal with the flat-horned ram form, he's still Afu Ra. This is why he has a mummified body here. As long as he's touching land, he's in the form of a land animal. He's Afu Ra. When that solar disk is just coming from the underworld and still moving from the physical landmass, eventually it'll be up in the air and there'll be space between the mountains and the solar disk. Then he'll be Ra. But while he's coming out of that physical body, he's still Afu Ra. So Afu Ra is in the solar disk. The mountains is a Ka, that's AFURAKA, the land Ka of Afu Ra. So we were just showing that cosmologically, just to give a further cosmological, grounding for this principle. The body of Al-Sar as the Duat. As we say, it's because Al-Sar is the sovereign of the spirit realm, which we're going to get into in some future books. His body makes up the whole Duat as shown in certain texts. Duat is the underworld. As the boat of Afu Ra sails underneath the world for the 12 hours of the night, here's another representation of that. Ra is Afu Ra with the solar disk on his head. He's in the boat sailing in the underworld. He's passing through the Duat, which is the kingdom of Asar. Each of the 12 hours of the night is represented by a division of the Duat that Afu Ra must sail through. Below is a depiction of Afu Ra and his attendants moving through the 12th, last division of the Duat. They talk about the 12 hours of the night, the underworld divided up into 12 divisions, and the boat is sailing through every hour in a new division until it gets to the 12th hour of the night. It's like the end of the nighttime and just beginning at dawn. The sky starts to clear, then the boat is going to move, and then eventually Ra's going to get into the boat and sail up into the sky and come from, in the underworld. But this is the 12th hour of the night, the very last hour, when he's the last phase of being Afu Ra, and he's about to transform into Ra. He's going to go from a land animal to a falcon. This is the final hour of the night, final hour of the underworld. When he reaches the 12th hour, the text of the Shatun Duat, the book of what is in the underworld from the tomb of Seti I, says that his boat passes directly through a great serpent from the tail through the mouth. Here's the great serpent in the 12th hour of the night, and the boat of Ra passes through the tail, and then it comes out of the mouth, and when it comes out the mouth, then that's the first hour of sunrise, the first hour of the day, and the boat goes up into the sky. But that great serpent that he's passing through, that serpent is called Ka in Ankh Ntoru, the Ka, soul of the living divinities. Ankh means life, Ntoru means deities, plural. This is a form connected to Asar as the Ka, the body of the Duat, and so forth. We have Afu Ra moving through a serpent whose name is Ka. Afu Ra is moving through Ka. And when he moves through the Ka, Afu Ra moving through the Ka, and that's the portion where the solar disk comes up out of the ground and then it goes up into the sky. But that snapshot of the 12th hour of the night, the final hour of the night, right before the daytime, right before the sun gets up into the sky, the sun emerges from the underworld, coming out of the mouth of the serpent Ka. Afu Ra moves through the Ka. Of course, that's AFURAKA. And it happens at the first sunrise in the creation of the universe, but it happens every sunrise from this point on. Every night, later tonight, Ra's moving through the underworld right now. Once sunrise happens, right before sunrise, just before sunrise, the 12th hour of the night, Ra's boat is going to be moving through that serpent called Ka. Afu Ra will be moving through the Ka. The divine solar energy is moving within the underworld. Afu Ra is moving through the flesh, the house, and so forth. That's what's happening. And then at sunrise, he goes up into the sky. So that's Afu Ra moving through the Ka. Yet another aspect of the cosmology of the Ka being that primordial aspect of, connected to the primordial earth and so forth, and the divine solar energy moving inside the earth to enliven, empower, embolden the earth and so forth, AFURAKA. And this is the final hour when the boat is moving through the primordial underworld and so forth, the final hour, and then it's gonna pass up into the sky, and the beetle is pushing the solar disk and is gonna push it up into the sky, and then it's gonna fly into the sky. And this is actually the border of the 12th hour of the night. And once it goes through this hole, then it, goes up in the sky. Variation of the same thing. So in this particular section, we were simply showing that Asar has the title Ka. He's called Ka. He's called Ka Amentet. He's called Ka Hetep. He's called Ka, just Ka, period. When Ra as Afu Ra unites with Asar in the form of Ka, that's AFURAKA. When Afu Ra moves to the serpent Ka in Ntoru, the last division of the Duat, which is the sunrise and so forth, Afu Ra is moving through the Ka and so forth. This is just further corroboration cosmologically of what we say phonetically. No European has ever given that examination. Now, in this particular section, we were talking about Ptah, the fashioner of earth. Deep within the inner core, he's fashioning and forming the earth. He works on behalf of Ra and Ra bring, things into being out of nothing and so forth. And that, divine living energy is animating, the black substance of space and the primordial suns and moons and stars and so forth. Ptah is deep within the core, and he's fashioning the forms of the planets, suns, moons, stars, and so forth, just like the thermodynamics in the earth are fashioning the form of the earth at all times and so forth. He's deep within his workshop fashioning. So when they talk about the lineage of Ptah being, the first king of earth and so forth, then he's followed by Atem, and then Shu, and then Geb, and then Asar and so forth. You're talking about the inner core of earth, Ptah. Then you have Atem, which is the lower mantle. Then Shu, his son, is the upper mantle. Then the son of Shu is Geb, which is the earth's crust. They call Geb the earth divinity. That's the earth's crust. Then the son of Geb is Asar, the black soil, and so forth. So every level, you have Ptah, Atem, Shu, Geb, Asar, inner core, lower mantle, upper mantle, crust, black soil. And the kingship of earth is passed, dealing with the beginning of earth forming. When they say the kingship of earth was passed from Ptah to Atem to Shu to Geb to Asar, they're talking about that geologically as well, in order. And Ptah in ancient Kamit, he's Obuadie in Akhan, he's Obaluae in Yoruba, Sakpata in Vodun and so forth, same divinity. So we talked about that because we want to also show that his sacred sanctuary is called Hatpataka, the house of the soul of Ptah. That's the deep core within earth. The house, the Hat, is the temple, the house, the sanctuary, and so forth. Same as Hut. This is where the term Hut comes from. It comes from Hat in ancient Kemet and so forth. And then Hatpataka is the house of the Ka of Ptah and so forth. And that is called Min-Nefer, or so-called Memphis, now corruption, but Min-Nefer, the beautiful, stable place. The sanctuary is called Hatpataka, the sanctuary of the divinity. And when Afu Ra is working in concert with Ptah, Ptah is also called Ka as well. So we show that just to give further corroboration. We talk about, he's called Vulcan, he's called Hephaestos in Greek, and Vulcan in Rome and so forth, and Vulcan is Vulakan, the R and L interchange in ancient Kemet. So Vulcan is Vulkan, Vurakan, Furakan, and all of that. So we go into some detail about that, but it's more so showing that lineage of the different divinities, the formation of earth and so forth, and the fact that Ka is a title of Ptah as well. And this is why you have Hatpataka. Now, so as you're reading through that, you'll see we needed to add that in just to show the relationship between the center core of earth, the fashioning of earth, and the relationship of Ptah and Afu Ra. Now, the term Al-Kabulan, many people assume that was actually an original term for the continent. Dr. Ben Yakinen made that popular. That came from Leo Africanus, which is different from Scipio Africanus, who lived over 2,000 years ago. Leo Africanus lived over 500 years ago. He wrote a geographical history of Africa in so-called 1526. And he was just, looking around, trying to write a history based on the sources that he had. He said that the Arabians and Ethiopians referred to the continent as Al-Kabulan. And because he said that in the 1500s, some assume that was the only original name of the continent, indigenous, and Africa really comes from the Greeks or the Romans, which is totally false. Al-Kabulan is an Arabic title, and it's an Arabic title that's a corruption of a Kanani title. anybody looking at the term, knowing al-Kebu, they already know right away that this is not an indigenous AFURAKANI term. And some people are naming themselves al-Kebulan and their schools and their rites of passage programs, thinking that this is the only original indigenous name for the continent. And it's not. It's not even an indigenous name. It's an Arabic corruption. So we need to stop using that. And we're the first to show the etymology of the term and its cosmology. Now, El is a definite article, not only in Arabic and Aramaic, as well as Northwest Semitic and so forth, Ilu and El and Al and Il and so forth. But it's the definite article. Al-Kitab meaning the, al-book, kitab, al-nur, nur meaning light, al-nur, the light. Al becomes El in Spanish when the Black people who were called Moors in a derogatory fashion invaded Spain or went into Spain and took it over from the Europeans and so forth who had invaded. And that's the only reason they were in control, the Iberian Peninsula. So you have that El in Spanish. El Presidente means the, El President and so forth. El Toro means the bull and so forth. Now, Al is a title in ancient Canaan, so-called Canaan, in the region of Palestine, Israel now. We talked about how our people migrated from North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT into the Near East, established civilization, Canaan, later misnomer Canaan, Palestine and Israel. In ancient Canaan civilization, the creator is Al, is a title of the creator. Alat is a title of the creatress. The root of this prefix is Ur and Urat in ancient Kamit. Ur and Urat became Ul and Ulat. And then later on, Ul and Ulat was corrupted by the whites and offspring into Allah and Alat. And then they started adding these attributes of white culture into, you know, corrupted titles. So first you have Ur and Urat. In ancient Kamit, Ra Ur means Ra the Great One. Amen Ur means Amen the Great One. Heru Ur means Heru the Great One. Urt Hekau means the Great One, feminine, the great goddess Hekau of the divine words. So Ur and Urat became corrupted into Ul and Ulat. We don't have an L in the language of Kemet, there's a rolling R. Same in Akhan. There's no L in the Akhan language, there's a rolling R. So if there's a foreign word that enters the language and we repeat it, then we use the rolling R. So we always use the example, if an Akhan person heard a European person say mulatto, and they repeated it in Akhan, they would say murato. And when you look in Akhan dictionary, the word murato, muratoni, is the term for mulatto, because we don't use the L. In ancient Kemet, there's no letter L. So the term, for example, Cleopatra, the L, when translated into the medutu during the Greek period, was represented by the symbol for the letter R. Hold on. It was represented by the medut for the letter R, the couchant lion. So it reads in the medutu, Cleopatra. But the Greeks would say K-L, Cleopatra. We would say Cleopatra because we didn't have a letter L. When this passes into the Near East, Ur becomes Ul and Urat becomes Ulat. And this is where that comes from. So this is what we're saying here. La and Lat becomes Al, Alat. Ra and Rat becomes Lat, La and Lat. Ur, Ra becomes Ura, Ura, Ula, Ula, and Allah, later Allah, which is corruption. And just so you can see, let's do this real quick. In our Afu Rait Boson book, we have this, we go into some detail to show the medut for that. So this is one of our books dealing with the deities of the 7 days of the week. And we were talking about once again, we were talking about Ka and Kait. And we were talking about ancient Sumer, Kangi, which is Khan, which is the title of, ancient Nubia, the Khan land, Kanit, and so forth. But so there's Ka and Kaka once again, showing the continuity of culture from Kanit, title of Nubia, Kamit, Kangi, Sumer, and Akhan people. Sumer is where Iraq is now, ancient quote unquote Akkad, Babylon, and all of that. You see the figure, mother divinity from the Ubaidian period, pre-dynastic Sumer, Kangi, 7,000 years ago. Then thousands of years later, Inanna from the Akkadian era of Sumer, the Akkadian Empire. Then later in the Akhan tradition, you have the same divinity, the Ankh and so forth, and then the Ankh holding the breast, just like she's holding the breast here. So it's a continuity of culture. But then we go further and show the Ankh with the arms and legs, hands and feet, anthropomorphized Ankh, same Akurba, and so forth. We're just showing the continuity of culture. We're showing the days of the week have the same names in Akhan as they have in ancient Kanit and Kemet. But then we talk about the sun being called Udu, Uru in Sumer, Uriah in Akhan. And then we show that Ur means great, much superior, very great, greatness in size. Ur, Ura, great God. Uru, gods who lighten the darkness, that becomes Uruim. And in Hebrew, Uluim or Elohim or Elohim, coming from Uruim. That comes from Uru, the divinities, lighten the darkness. But Ra, Ur means Ra, the great one. Ra, the great in size. But Ura means the great God. That Ura becomes Ula later on. Then when it passes into the Near East and so forth, it's Ura, Ur, and Urat, and so forth. In Akhan, you have Ura, master, lord, also landlord, possessor, owner. Awura for the woman, the female, mistress, lady, landlady, possessor, owner. So Owura in Akhan, which Mr., master, and so forth. Awura in Akhan, mistress, owner, possessor. That Owura in Akhan comes from Ura in ancient Kemet, the great one, the owner, the possessor, superior, and so forth. And the feminine is Urat. So Owura and Awura are honorific titles, title of Inyokompon, Owura, Owura Day, and so forth. So that goes back to that Uru and Urura, that eventually becomes Ura, Ura, Ula, and all of that. So we needed to show that. Okay. So we have Ra, Ur, or Ura becoming Ula, and later Allah, Ut, Urat becoming Ulat and Alat, and so forth. Ron Ryder, the creator and creatress. Amen and Amenet are the supreme being. Ra and Ra'et serve Amen and Amenet, and they are grandchildren of the supreme being, as we're going to see in the future classes. So even when they say Allah is the creator of the universe, they reduced Alat to a daughter of Allah to make her inferior, so they could just say there's one God, Allah. Well, Allah is not the supreme being. Allah is a corruption of Ura, and Ra is not the supreme being. He is the grandchild of the supreme being. So their idiocy is apparent all around. They don't know who Ra is and Ra'et is. They utilize a corruption of the title Ura and Urat to apply their personality to put their voice in their silly little book, you know, the Quran and so forth, to promote white supremacy, white so-called supremacy under the name, a corrupted title of a divinity. So that's what's happening. So we need to know that, because that's where that L prefix comes from. Now, the root kebu of our cable line is important. The north wind divinity in Kamit is called kebu or kebui, four-headed ram divinity, north wind, sometimes a ram divinity with the full body of the ram, sometimes the heads, four-headed ram, and the body of the male. That's the north wind divinity. In Rome, the southwest wind was called Afer-ventis, Afer-ventis, Afri-ventis, the African wind, southwest. They also called it Afrikus. Some fools will try to say that the continent of Africa was named after Afrikus, the Roman wind divinity, which is idiotic. The key is the reason they call, so you have Italy here. They said the southwest wind is the African wind, Afer-ventis. This is Italy. Southwest is the region at that point. This is the 3rd century AD. At that point, they were calling this region Africa. This part they were calling Cyrenaica and so forth. This portion they was calling Numidia. Originally, all of the people here living in this area are the first people they came in contact with. These are the Arika people, the Tuareg, Berbers and so forth, the children of Afri. They called the land AFURAKA, and the Romans learned about that. But when the Romans invaded, they were just living on the coast, and they labeled different things. They took titles and just labeled certain things. But southwest of Italy is the province of Africa and so forth. The southwest wind that came up from, or came down from AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT into Italy and so forth. They were like, the southwest wind divinity is the Afrikas, Afrikus, the African wind. What is southwest to them is north to us, because that's the north AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT. To them is southwest, but to us is north. So for them, the southwest wind divinity, Afer-ventis, is for us, from our vantage point, is the north wind, and that's Kebui or Kebu. It's the land of Kebu. From them being, you know, in Southern Europe and the Near East, they'll say this is the land of Kebu, Al-Kebu line. This is the land of Kebu, the land of the southwest wind divinity. We didn't call AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT the land of Kebui, the land of the north wind divinity. They referred to the land Al-Kebu line, but it even goes further than that. Kebui, Al-Kebui, Al-Gebal. The term Gebal, Gebel, Gebal, Gevul, Gebel, Jebel, and so forth, Arabic, Hebrew, all of that. But in ancient Kanana, when we first migrated to the region, mountain is the term for Gebal. The deity, Al, became known as Al-Gebal, the great father of the Gebal of the mountain, or the great one of Gebal, the mountain, Al-Gebal. In Kamit, the sun rises in the east. The mountain range is called Bakau. It sets in the west, and there's a mountain range along the west of Kamit that's called Minu, and the sun sets between those mountains. It rises between the mountain range and the eastern horizon of Bakau. We had that understanding, so when we move, you know, in the east and so forth, or into the Near East, move north, we said, all right, we continue to say what we're saying. Ra, operating through the Yaten, rises in the east through the mountain range called Bakau, the old man of the mountain, so forth, El Gabal. When they moved into the Near East, the region of Palestine, Israel, which we call Kanana, they were utilizing the same cosmological understanding. El Gabal, a title of Ra, operating through the mountains. The wife of El Gabal in Kanana, called Balat Gebal, The great temple of Balat in the city of Gebal is called Balat, Gebalat, associated with Het Heru and Kamit. She's also called Herit, Lady of the Red Mountain, and so forth. There's a major city called Gebal, also Gubla, later called Byblos by the Greeks. The Kanani name Gebal became Gebalin as used by the Romans. The term Gebalin, coming from El Gabal, also exists in Arabic as Gebaline, meaning the two mountains, as in between the two mountains. Carthage, which is North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, where Tunisia is today. So later on, this is a, quote unquote 3rd century, but then later on today in this region where Tunisia is in North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT. And Tunisia is the, capital, Tunisia and so forth. Kart Hadast, an important colony of the Kanani civilization, which exists in the region of today's Tunisia, North AFURAKA, AFURAITKAIT, is connected to the mountain range now called the Atlas Mountains. So the Atlas Mountains in Arabic would be called Gebaline, coming from El Gabal. Now, in Syria, after the white invasion and takeover of certain areas of the Kanani the Kanani deity El Gabal, the great elder one of the mountain and so forth, became known by the white Syrians as simply the sun god. Once again, Ra is not the sun god, yet the whites and offspring call Ra the sun god. The Greeks call him Helios. In Latin, they call him Sol, S-O-L, the sun god, and so forth. We didn't call Ra the sun god. Aten is the sun god, but this is what they have been doing. They still do that today. Even Egyptologists will say that, even though they know it's not true. Back then, they did the same thing. So El Gabal is the divinity. They started calling him the sun god. This is the region of Kanana. This is Kamit, northern Kamit. Then you go through Sinai Peninsula and you get into ancient Kanana, now Palestine and Israel and all of that. But north of that is Syria. Syria became powerful at some point and they invaded the region and took over. When they get to that region of Kanana, learn about El Gabal, they start calling El Gabal the sun god. During the Severan dynasty of the Roman Empire, the emperor was eventually called El Gabalus, Greek suffix at the end, corruption. He was a dissexual homosexual who came from Syria. He brought the corrupted white form of pseudo worship of El Gabal from Syria to Rome. Just like white people invaded Kamit, they started making all the deities sculptures white, Greek and Roman looking statues. Of course, no spirit inhabits those sculptures and so forth. And they started calling these little white sculptures Osiris and Isis and Helios and all kinds of nonsense. They did the same thing in Syria, corrupted the actual tradition of the blacks, started calling these little white images deities, started calling El Gabal the sun god, started saying that they were priests of the sun god of El Gabal. This emperor started calling himself El Gabalus and so forth. Nonsense. He brought that from Syria to Rome. He claimed to be, a high priest of El Gabal, pure foolishness. So the Romans called the divinity El Gabalus. The Greeks called the divinity Heliogabalus because they thought he was a sun god. The shrine of the divinity, they called it the El Gabalium once they took over. He was called Deus Sol Invictus, God the undefeated sun, whose birthday was December 25th. Sol, once we said, is Latin for sun. But there's a relationship between the Arabized Afurakanu, AFURAITKAIT Africans, Black people known as Moors, the usage of the term Al-Kabulan, El Gebaline, between the two mountains, El Gabal and El Kebu. So they didn't understand by the time they got involved in Islam and all that foolishness and start, you know, even before that, getting caught up in the whole Roman, Greek, you know, culture and so forth. Some of our people got caught up in that. So getting involved in Christianity, you know, you see these Black, you know, early church fathers and so forth, and some of those people are people getting caught up in that nonsense, then later on getting caught up in, you know, Islam and so forth. But one of the forms of Ra is that of the flat horn ram, as we said. There are other deities that have the head of the ram, such as Amen. The sun sets, rises in Bakau, eastern mountain range, sets in the west, Menu. When the sun sets in the west, the western mountain range, descending below the mountains, Menu, the temperature goes down. The cool north winds are directed, sent by the divinity Atem, are then felt. Therefore, in the Imheru, the book of the quote unquote book of the dead coming forth by day, it is stated, this is Atem sitting in the red setting sun, and when the sun sets, goes underground, there's no more heat and light, then the cool north winds come from the north and hit the people. The text says, 3,300 years ago, I am a follower of Tahuti, rejoicing in all that he has done. He brought the sweet air for your nose, life and vigor to gladden your face, and the north wind, Kebu, which is, he sent the divinity Kebu with the wings, the four wings, the north wind. He sent the divinity Kebu, the north wind that comes from Atem for your nostrils. So we say when Atem is in the red setting sun, sets below the western mountain, Atem, this divinity, sends Kebu, go to the land and cool off the people. And that cool wind refreshes us. Even the word Keb in Kamit means cool and refreshing and so forth. So the whites confused and deliberately confounded the manifestation of the flat-horned ram form of Ra, Afu Ra, and confounded him with the flat-horned ram divinity Kebu. They have an association in cosmology, but also pictorially. When the sun sets in the west, Ra goes from the falcon and becomes a flat-horned ram. However, when the sun sets in the west, the flat-horned ram divinity Kebu comes to cool the land off. So while he's cooling the land off on the surface, Ra is in the form of a flat-horned ram under the surface. Whites and offspring combine the two. So you'll see, for example, text to say, I'm Kepra in the morning, Ra at noon, Atem in setting. These are three different divinities. Whites and offspring will try to say they're all forms of one deity. Kepra is a divinity called Tridriampong and Akhan. As a matter of fact, Ra is Nyankopon and Akhan. Atem is Odomankama and Akhan. These are three different deities shown side by side. And as a matter of fact, just so you can see that, just pull it up real quick. In fact, we'll pull it up on the and after this, we'll be done with this section. Just want to show this last piece. Okay, so in our book, Odomankama, Tridriampong, talking about Atem and Kepra. This is Ra, flat-horned ram, Kepra in the morning, head of a beetle, Atem, the head of a man, in the evening and so forth, Kepra dealing with the power connected to the sunrise, Ra, and then Atem dealing with the sunset. So these are three different deities working together. It's not a reflection of the idiocy of monotheism. We've always been polytheistic. Only slaves who think polytheism is inferior because their master told them it was inferior, trying to promote the idiocy of monotheism in Islam and Christianity and Judaism and so forth, trying to make you follow one divinity, not listen to the actual deities connected to your blood circle. They want you to listen to just one, and that one represents them, and don't pay attention to anybody else. That's the way they control our minds. So some of our people are still trying to say that ancient Kemet was a polytheistic society or a monotheistic society, pure stupidity, self-hatred. So that's why they're trying to fuse those together and say they're all the same. In reality, Al-Kebu, the north wind, spirit is sent by Atem when he sets in the west, in the Geba line, the mountains. It's through that, process that they tried to fuse together Kebu, Al-Kebu, Al-Geba line, the mountains, Afu Ra, and then pull it all together. El Gabal, Kebu, El Kebu, they tried to make all the same divinity. El Gabal is Ra, Kebu is the northern wind divinity. So El Gabalat, El Kebu, El Geba line became El Kebu line. So we have some more information about that, but that's where it comes from. It's an Arabic title that's a corruption of El Gabal, the manifestation of the divinity in Kanana, so-called Canaan and so forth, but that is not the original title of the landmass of the continent. Never has been. So what we're going to do here is 1018. So we're going to stop here. We're on page 34, and it's only a couple more sections. We'll be finished with that book. We can finish that within about 15 minutes or so next week. So, and then we're going to move on to the next text. So, yeah, I'll say everybody for tuning in. We ran a little bit late. So if you have any questions, just send me an email and then we can look at them and then we can address them in the next session. So, yeah, I'll say we thank you for joining in, and Yabesha Bio, we will meet again. What's up?